Welcome back to Enigma of the Unknown, where the familiar becomes frightening, and everyday tales take a sinister turn. When we think of snowmen, we picture them as symbols of joy and winter fun, standing guard in yards with their carrot noses and button eyes. But some snowmen have a chilling presence, far from cheerful. In today's video, we're diving into two eerie stories of snowmen that haunted Christmases in America. One in the dark woods of Maine, and the other in the heart of Chicago. So, bundle up and prepare for tales that turn a holiday icon into a figure of terror. Story number 1. Snowman in the Maine woods, 1972. On a winter's night in 1972, the small town of Glenwood, Maine, lay under a pristine blanket of white snow, creating a serene and enchanting winter landscape. Christmas lights twinkled everywhere, reflecting off the snow's surface and transforming the town into a magical kingdom. The crisp, cool winter air mingled with cheerful Christmas music emanating from local shops, bringing a sense of warmth and happiness to everyone in town. In a cozy wooden house on the edge of town, a group of friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, Jenny, and Lisa, eagerly prepared for the Christmas festivities. Close friends since childhood, they always enjoyed winter activities together. Their bond and friendship created a cozy and loving atmosphere. Tom, the strong and courageous one, was carefully selecting the largest snowballs to form the snowman's body. Sarah, gentle and creative, was arranging accessories like a red scarf and a white fur hat for the snowman. Mike, always cheerful and full of laughter, tried balancing a coffee cup on his head to make the snowman even more unique. Jenny and Lisa, the youngest but full of enthusiasm, worked together to position the hat and decorate the snowman's face with small stones and twigs. "We're going to make this snowman amazing," Mike beamed, glancing happily at his friends. Sarah nodded, her eyes sparkling. "That's right, Mike. This will be the best snowman we've ever made." Jenny and Lisa carefully placed small stones to form the snowman's eyes and mouth, creating a bright, friendly smile. Tom crouched down, adding some branches to complete the snowman's shape, while Sarah gently draped the red scarf around its neck. When they finished, the group decided to take a commemorative photo with their snowy creation. They gathered around the snowman, the Christmas lights reflecting on their faces, creating beautiful, meaningful memories. "This will be a wonderful memory for us," Lisa said, admiring the photo they would capture. Tom smiled and nodded. "Definitely. We'll come back here each holiday season to keep this tradition alive." The friends stood together, laughing and posing with the snowman, capturing moments filled with joy and camaraderie. The warm holiday spirit melted away any worries, filling everyone's heart with peace and happiness. As night began to fall, the moon cast a soft glow over the nearby forest where they built the snowman. The silhouettes of the dark, silent trees created a mysterious but not frightening atmosphere. The friends looked up, gazing at the starry sky and feeling the magic and wonder of Christmas. "We did a great job," Sarah said thoughtfully, her voice full of pride. Mike squeezed Sarah's hand, smiling. "Absolutely, but we'll come back here next year, won't we?" Tom and Jenny nodded, while Lisa gazed at the moonlight, feeling a sense of peace in her heart. The friends left the forest, leaving the large snowman standing amidst the glistening Christmas lights. They walked back home together, joy and happiness radiating in their hearts. Yet, just as they walked away, a chilling wind swept through, rustling the fallen leaves and creating a faint whispering sound from the depths of the forest. "It's just the wind," Tom said, trying to sound cheerful. "Nothing to worry about." The group continued walking, but Lily couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. Her gaze lingered on the forest, now shrouded in darkness as they left. She frowned, sensing a strange presence in the quiet, wintry night. As the friends stepped inside, the warm glow from the windows reflected on their faces, bringing a sense of safety and comfort. They sat together, sharing happy stories and preparing for their Christmas family celebration. But in the darkness of the winter night, The Maine woods held secrets yet to be revealed, restless spirits, and chilling sounds waiting to emerge. None of them knew that right after this joyous moment, a nightmare would slowly begin to creep into their lives, transforming Christmas Eve into a time of unimaginable horror. The morning after the friends finished building their snowman, the town of Glenwood, Maine, remained peaceful and serene under a thick blanket of snow. The untouched whiteness created a beautiful and tranquil winter landscape. However, the group of friends couldn't shake the lingering image of the large snowman they had built at the forest's edge. Little did they know that eerie events were about to unfold. The night after they built the snowman, as everyone was fast asleep, strange disturbances began. It started with the sound of heavy breathing echoing from afar, as if someone was struggling to catch their breath in the quiet of the winter night. These breaths were unlike any they had heard before, carrying a chilling and haunting tone. Tom, the strongest and bravest of the group, was the first to notice. He lay in bed, trying to sleep but unable to drift off. Suddenly, he heard the deep, labored breathing coming from the direction of the forest. He glanced out the window but saw only the faint silhouettes of pine trees. Nothing unusual. "Do you see anything?" Tom asked Sarah, who was sitting beside him on the bed. Sarah shook her head, though worry flickered in her eyes. "I only hear the breathing. Maybe it's just the wind." But the strange sounds continued, punctuated by raspy whispers, saying, "I'm here." The whispering cast a heavy, eerie atmosphere over the room, making the air feel colder than ever. The next day, the friends decided to return to the forest to check on the snowman. They walked along snow-covered paths, eyes carefully observing everything around them. But when they reached the spot where they had built the snowman, they were shocked to see that it had vanished without a trace. Only mysterious footprints led deeper into the woods, as if someone or something had dragged it away. "This doesn't make any sense," Mike said, holding Lisa's hand and pointing at the tracks in the snow. "Could someone really have taken our snowman?" Jenny, the most sensitive and gentle of the group, felt a surge of fear rising within her. "Maybe we should call the police. This isn't normal at all." Following the snowman's disappearance, bizarre events began to happen to each of the friends. Tom slipped and broke his leg while walking in the snow, enduring not only physical pain but also terrifying nightmares each night. In his dreams, he was dragged into a dark forest where the large snowman mysteriously vanished. Sarah, who caught a severe cold and had to be hospitalized, also couldn't escape frightening experiences. She often woke up in the middle of the night, feeling as though someone was standing beside her bed, touching her shoulder and whispering, "I'm here." Mike, who had a car accident on his way home, felt as though he was constantly being watched while driving along snowy roads. More than once, he caught glimpses of a man dressed as Santa Claus, standing silently by the roadside, staring at his car before vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. Jenny and Lisa weren't spared from strange occurrences either. They frequently heard eerie laughter coming from the forest, resembling Santa's laugh but with a chilling, threatening edge. On several occasions, they even saw the figure of a man dressed as Santa standing silently in the forest, watching them before disappearing before they could react. These strange incidents and mysterious accidents deepened the friends' worry and fear. They began to feel as though a dark force was targeting them, trying to bring harm. This fear not only took a toll on their mental states but also strained their relationships. Light-hearted conversations turned into tense discussions filled with anxiety. "We need to find out the truth," Tom said, his voice shaking with concern. "We can't keep living in fear like this." Sarah nodded in agreement, her eyes filled with determination. "We have to go back to the forest and uncover what's really behind these events." As the friends resolved to discover the truth, their fear and unease continued to grow. Strange signs and disturbing events remained an ever-present threat, making them feel as though there was no escape from the darkness slowly closing in around them. The morning after discovering the snowman had vanished, with mysterious footprints leading deep into the forest. The group of friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, Jenny, and Lisa, felt a lingering fear they couldn't shake. The strange accidents and eerie laughter had only heightened their anxiety. Determined to uncover the truth behind these unsettling events, they decided to return to the forest to investigate. In the daylight, the Maine forest was silent and more mysterious than ever. The friends prepared carefully, bringing flashlights, walking sticks, and water bottles. They stepped into the forest, crunching through thick snow, following the unusual footprints that led them further in. "We have to be careful," Tom said, his voice a mix of resolve and unease. "We don't know what we might encounter here." Sarah led the way, keeping the group on track. They passed narrow trails and snow-covered branches, their footsteps echoing in the stillness of the forest. The flashlight beams cut through the canopy, casting long shadows and strange shapes on the ground. After some time, they reached a deeper part of the forest where there was no sign of life. In the middle of the woods, they discovered an abandoned house, covered in thick snow and dense trees. The house looked old and desolate, with broken windows and collapsing doors. A chill ran down their spines as they stared at the place. "We should check inside," Jenny suggested, her voice shaky with fear. The friends approached cautiously, pushing open the old wooden door. Inside, they found dark symbols painted on the walls and strange drawings that created a haunting scene. The air was heavy, with a foul stench that made it difficult to breathe. On a table near the window, they spotted an old, leather-bound journal with weathered pages, damp with age. Tom opened the journal and began to read. December 12th, 1972. "I can't believe this is happening. The snowman we built isn't just a festive symbol. It's a gateway to another world. The trapped spirits in this forest don't want to be freed. They'll do anything to keep us here, forcing us into an endless cycle of pain and resentment." Sarah gasped, her voice filled with alarm. "This is terrifying. We may have unknowingly triggered a curse." As Tom finished reading the last line of the journal, the air in the house suddenly turned colder. Shadows began to emerge from the dark corners. Moving slowly and indistinctly, they felt surrounded by spirits, each one bearing an expression of sorrow and anger. "We need to get out of here right now," Mike said, his voice trembling. "This place isn't safe for us." But before they could move, a spirit appeared directly in front of them, his hollow eyes filled with malice. "I don't want you to leave," the spirit whispered, its voice like a cold wind rustling through the trees. Jenny and Lisa, terrified, tried to back away, but their feet felt frozen to the snowy floor. Sarah, her determination mingled with fear, raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "We're sorry. We don't know what to do." The spirit seemed unmoved, its empty eyes locked onto them, never breaking its stare. Heavy breathing and murmuring continued around them, creating a chaotic and terrifying atmosphere. The friends quickly decided to leave the abandoned house, but as they tried to exit, the windows closed miraculously, forming an impenetrable barrier. They felt trapped in a space filled with spirits and the dark curse of the forest. "We need to find a way to break this curse," Sarah said, her voice filled with determination yet tinged with fear. But how? As they searched for a way to escape, the strange laughter and heavy breathing grew louder, making the air even heavier and more menacing. The group felt as if they were surrounded by vengeful spirits, unsure if they could ever make it out alive. Christmas Eve, 1972, had arrived, and Glenwood, Maine, was filled with the festive atmosphere of twinkling lights and cheerful Christmas music. However, the group of friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, Jenny, and Lisa, could not shake the horror of recent events. Fear and unease clung to them, and they resolved to return to the dark forest to confront the lurking shadows once and for all. That morning, they gathered at Tom's house to plan for the encounter. They packed all the essentials: flashlights, walking sticks, and the materials noted in the old journal they'd found. Sarah, with her creative spirit, had carefully studied the ritual from the journal, which promised to free the trapped spirits. "We need to perform the ritual correctly to break the curse," Sarah said, her voice filled with determination. "If not, we'll always be haunted by these spirits." Mike, always the optimist, tried to reassure everyone. "We've made it through hard times before, and we'll get through this too." Under the faint light of the moon, the friends set off into the forest. The towering branches and dense shadows created an ominous, eerie atmosphere. The howling wind and distant, twisted laughter made them feel like they were being watched. When they reached the spot where they built the snowman, the beams of their flashlights cast long, ghostly shadows on the ground. The snowman was gone, leaving only strange footprints leading deeper into the forest. Sarah took the lead, keeping the group together as they navigated the dark trail. "We have to find the place where we first encountered the spirit and perform the ritual now," Sarah said, her voice carrying through the silence of the woods. The friends pressed deeper into the forest, following the footprints until they arrived at the abandoned house they'd explored before. Entering the house, they felt the heavy chill and oppressive atmosphere once again. The strange symbols and dark drawings on the walls were still there, creating a threatening, mysterious scene. Sarah began the ritual outlined in the journal while dark spirits appeared around them. The shadowy figures circled the group, letting out eerie laughter and heavy breaths as they tried to prevent them from completing the ritual. "We can't give up," Tom shouted, pushing back against the spirits that attacked them. At that moment, the shadowy figure of the mysterious man in a Santa suit emerged from the darkness, his empty eyes filled with vengeance. "I won't let you escape from here," he hissed, his voice chilling and powerful. As the friends continued the ritual, the dark spirits and John Michaels grew increasingly aggressive. In the chaos, Lisa found herself trapped among the spirits, unable to break free. Sarah saw her friend's desperate situation and chose to make the ultimate sacrifice to complete the ritual. "Sarah, don't do this," Tom shouted, but Sarah had already made up her mind. She continued reading the final lines of the ritual while Mike and Jenny fought to shield her from the attacking spirits. Sarah's final words echoed through the room, and a powerful gust of wind swept through the abandoned house. The light from their flashlights grew intensely bright, shattering the darkness and releasing the trapped spirits. John Michaels, filled with rage and despair, vanished with a last, twisted laugh, leaving only strange footprints on the ground. Exhausted and aching, the friends had succeeded in breaking the curse and freeing the lost souls. They returned home bearing both physical wounds and deep-seated fears, yet also a newfound hope for a peaceful future. It's over. We did it," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with relief and joy. Tom, Mike, and Jenny embraced one another, feeling a bond stronger than ever. "We made it through together," Mike said warmly, but when they looked back at the abandoned house once more, they noticed that the forest still bore traces of the horrors they'd endured. Strange footprints remained in the snow, and the eerie laughter echoed faintly from afar, as if to remind them that darkness would always linger, ready to return when the next holiday season drew near. Story number 2. The Deadly Snowman of Chicago, 1958. In Chicago, during the winter of 1958, the city lay cloaked in a biting chill. Snow blanketed everything, main streets and narrow alleys alike, casting the world in white. Twinkling lights from shops and homes filled the air with a festive glow, but even they couldn't dispel the pervading cold. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, the Johnson family was preparing for Christmas. Their two-story wooden house nestled among bare trees, and its snow-covered roof created a scene straight out of a fairy tale. Inside, the fireplace crackled, filling the room with a cozy warmth. "Michael, Emily, are you two ready?" called Robert Johnson, the father, from downstairs. He was a construction engineer with a tall, sturdy build and a face that was stern yet kind. "We're coming," came the hurried footsteps on the stairs as the two children raced down, their faces alight with joy. Michael, 12 years old, had bright, intelligent eyes and neatly combed brown hair. His younger sister, Emily, had a rosy-cheeked, golden-haired innocence. Linda Johnson, their mother, emerged from the kitchen with a tray of freshly baked cookies. Have a snack before you go outside. You too. No, Mom. We want to make the snowman right now, Emily said eagerly, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Robert laughed heartily. All right, let's head outside. But remember to bundle up. The family wrapped themselves in thick coats, scarves, and woolen hats, then stepped into the snow-filled yard. The cold nipped at their faces, making their breath visible in white puffs. Let's get started, Michael called, beginning to roll a large snowball for the snowman's body. Emily and their parents pitched in, filling the air with laughter. Our snowman will be the best one on the block, Emily declared proudly. Linda smiled, but she felt a vague sense of unease she couldn't quite place. She glanced around, feeling as if someone, or something, was watching them from afar. Yet when she looked, she saw only silent houses and bare trees. Sweetie, hand me the carrot for the snowman's nose, she said, brushing away the unsettling feeling. Emily ran over and handed her the carrot and 2 small lumps of coal. Here, Mom, let me help you make his face. Together, they carefully placed the details on the snowman: coal eyes, carrot nose, and a friendly smile. Robert added an old hat on its head and wrapped a red scarf around its neck. Perfect, Michael exclaimed, stepping back to admire their handiwork. But then he frowned. It kind of looks like his head is tilted. Robert stepped forward, adjusting the snowman's head. How about now? Better, Michael said, though a hint of doubt lingered in his expression. Come on, let's go inside. It's freezing out here, Linda urged them. The family returned indoors, leaving the snowman standing quietly in the yard. It's dark. Coal eyes seemed to follow their retreating footsteps. That evening, the wind picked up, howling through the gaps around the doors. Inside, the Johnsons gathered around the fireplace, sharing Christmas stories, but Michael found it hard to focus. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Dad, can I look at the snowman from the window? He asked. Of course, son, Robert replied, barely paying attention. Michael walked over to the window and pulled back the curtain. Moonlight bathed the yard, casting strange shadows. The snowman still stood there, but its head seemed to have turned slightly, as though it were looking directly at him. Must be my imagination, Michael told himself, closing the curtain and returning to his seat. What's wrong, dear? Linda asked, noticing the troubled look on his face. Nothing, Mom, he replied reluctantly. That night, as everyone slept, the wind grew fiercer, whistling through the branches. A faint sound rustled outside in the yard, like footsteps crunching through the snow. Emily stirred and sat up, straining to listen. Michael, do you hear that? She whispered. Just go to sleep, Emily. It's nothing, Michael replied, though he wasn't entirely sure. They lay silently, but the sounds persisted, a soft shuffling and a faint scratching at the window, as if someone, or something, was trying to get in. The next morning, the family awoke to begin their day. Robert opened the front door to fetch the newspaper, but suddenly froze. What's wrong? Linda asked from inside. The snowman. Something's different about it, Robert said slowly. The family stepped out into the yard. The snowman was still there, but now it had an arm made from a dry tree branch, reaching out as if trying to grasp something. Did we put an arm on it? Linda asked, her unease returning. No, we just did the body and head yesterday, Michael said firmly. Maybe someone in the neighborhood added it as a joke, Robert suggested, trying to rationalize it. But who would be out here so late? Emily asked, wide-eyed with fear. Don't worry, sweetheart. It's probably just a prank, Linda reassured her, though her voice betrayed her worry. Robert decided to remove the strange branch arm. As he touched it, A chill ran down his spine, as if the arm was more than just a piece of wood. "Let's head inside," he said, tossing the branch aside. The day passed with an underlying tension. Michael and Emily were less eager to play. While Linda glanced frequently out the window, Robert tried to focus on his work. But the image of the snowman with its eerie branch arm stayed with him. As night fell, the Johnsons gathered for dinner, an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. "What's happening?" Emily gasped. "It's just a power outage," Robert reassured them. "I'll get the flashlight." As he stood up, a strange noise came from the front door, a soft, steady scratching. "Someone's outside," Michael whispered. "I'll check," Robert said, trying to stay calm. He walked to the door and pressed his ear to it. The scratching continued, like nails dragging lightly across the wood. "Don't open it," Linda warned, holding Emily's hand tightly. But Robert didn't listen. He opened the door, and the darkness outside stretched on. No one was there, yet the snowman had somehow moved closer, now just a few steps from the doorway. Its coal eyes seemed to stare directly at him, and its smile twisted into something unnerving. Robert stepped back, heart pounding. "This can't be. What is it?" Linda asked, her voice trembling. "It's nothing, just the wind, making the door rattle," he said, closing the door quickly, trying to mask his fear. The family gathered in the living room, no one saying a word. Outside, the wind howled louder, carrying with it strange, unidentifiable sounds. "We're going to be all right," Robert said, but even he wasn't convinced of his own words. Chapter 2. Strange signs begin to appear. The next morning, as dawn broke, the dim light of the sun filtered through thick clouds. Snow continued to fall lightly, covering the landscape in a pristine blanket of white. Linda woke up earlier than usual, the unsettling feeling from the night before still lingering. She went down to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, trying to shake off the strange thoughts clouding her mind. "Robert, are you up?" she called upstairs. "I'm coming down," Robert's voice replied, sounding tired. As the family gathered around the breakfast table, an unusual silence filled the air. Michael kept glancing out the window, a look of worry evident in his eyes. "What's wrong, Michael?" Linda asked, placing a comforting hand on her son's shoulder. "I think there's something wrong with the snowman outside," he whispered. "Don't be silly, son," Robert said, trying to keep his tone calm. "It's probably just the snow piling up, making him look a little different. But Dad, I swear, I saw him move last night," Michael insisted, his voice trembling. Emily, sitting beside him, looked wide-eyed. "What do you mean? Snowmen can't move." Robert stood up, determined to put an end to the conversation. "All right, I'll go outside and check. You kids stay inside." Stepping out into the yard, Robert pulled his coat tighter, shivering from the cold. The snowman was still standing there, but its coal-black eyes seemed even darker and deeper, and its smile had twisted into something strange and unnatural. Robert moved closer, noticing that the snowman now had a new arm, but it was oddly uneven. The new arm was longer, stretching out toward the house like a silent warning. "What in the world is going on?" he muttered. When he touched the arm, a wave of unnatural cold surged through his hand, almost as if the chill was seeping into his bones. He jerked his hand back, heart pounding. "Robert, is everything okay?" Linda called from the window. "Everything's fine," he replied, trying to stay calm. "I just need to adjust the snowman a bit." But deep down, Robert knew something was off. He decided to remove the strange arm and threw it in the trash. Before heading back inside, he took one last look at the snowman. Its coal-black eyes seemed to follow him with each step. That evening, the Johnson family sat together in the living room, watching a movie, but no one was truly focused. Michael kept glancing at the window, while Emily clutched her teddy bear tightly, fear written on her face. "Mom, Dad, can I talk to you for a second?" Michael spoke up as the movie ended. "Of course, son. What's on your mind?" Robert asked. "I think we should get rid of the snowman," he blurted out. "Why? We spent so much time making him," Linda said, confused. "I feel like he's not normal. I saw him move last night, and today, he had a new arm. It can't just be a coincidence." Robert and Linda exchanged glances. "You're just imagining things, Michael. Snowmen don't move on their own," Robert reassured him. "But, Dad, that's enough. Let's not talk about this anymore," Robert interrupted, his voice firm, disappointed. Michael stood up and headed to his room. Emily watched him go, then looked at her parents. "I'm scared of that snowman too," she whispered. Linda sighed. "Robert, maybe we should listen to them. If they feel uncomfortable, we could just take down the snowman." "Do you really believe in this nonsense?" Robert objected. "We can't let baseless fears take control." "But what if there's really something wrong?" Linda looked him in the eyes. "I felt uneasy ever since we made that snowman too." Robert remained silent for a moment. Finally, he sighed. "All right, I'll take it down tomorrow." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, a strange sound came from outside, a scraping noise, like something heavy being dragged across the snow. Michael opened his eyes, feeling a surge of unease. He decided to get out of bed and peek out the window. In the pale moonlight, he saw that the snowman was no longer in its original spot. Instead, it had moved closer to the house, only a few feet away. His dark eyes stared straight at his window, and its mouth, it was now wide open in a menacing grin, showing sharp, jagged teeth made from sticks. Michael stumbled back in terror, his heart racing. He ran to his parents' room, knocking frantically on the door. "Mom, Dad, wake up!" Robert opened the door, half asleep. "What's going on?" "Michael, the snowman. He moved. He's right outside." Robert sighed. "You just had a bad dream. Go back to bed." "No, you have to believe me," Michael nearly cried. Linda stepped over, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. "Robert, maybe we should check." The three of them went to the window, but when they looked outside, the snowman was back in its original place, motionless. "See, Michael, there's nothing there," Robert said, sounding weary. "But I swear he was closer," Michael stammered. "Son, you need to rest. We'll talk about it tomorrow," Linda said gently. Left with no choice, Michael returned to his room, but he couldn't shake the worry gnawing at him. The next morning, Robert decided to keep his promise and take down the snowman. He put on his coat and went outside, but as he approached, he froze in shock. The snowman had changed again. It was now much taller, with long, stick-like arms ending in sharp claws. His coal eyes were now hollow, empty sockets. His mouth gaped open, lined with sharp rocks, forming a disturbing grin. Robert felt a chill run down his spine. Who did this? He wondered aloud, but there was no answer. He began breaking the snowman apart, using a shovel to smash its icy body. But the more he tried, the more it felt as if he was fighting against something not entirely made of snow. Each strike of the shovel was met with a strange, groaning sound, like the wind howling through a narrow pass. Linda and the children watched anxiously from the window, their faces tense. "Will Dad be okay?" Emily asked. "Of course, sweetheart," Linda replied, though her eyes betrayed her own fear. Finally, Robert managed to demolish the snowman, leaving a scattered pile of snow on the ground. He exhaled deeply, relieved. "See? Nothing to worry about anymore," he said, forcing a smile as he returned inside. But as night fell, the fear returned. The wind outside no longer sounded natural, morphing into eerie whispers. Robert, Linda, Michael, Emily. The voices seemed to call out, beckoning them to come outside. Michael and Emily huddled together in their room. "Will we be okay?" Emily asked, trembling. "I don't know, but I'll protect you," Michael replied, trying to sound brave. In the living room, Robert and Linda sat in silence, listening to every sound. Suddenly, there was a soft, persistent knock at the front door. "Who could be here at this hour?" Linda whispered. Robert stood up, but Linda held his arm. "Don't open the door. We can't just sit here," he replied, determination in his eyes. He moved toward the door and peered through the peephole. There was no one outside, just darkness, yet the sense of dread remained. "There's no one there," Robert said, but then the knocking came again, louder this time. "This isn't normal," Linda said, her voice shaking. Robert decided not to open the door. "Let's call the police." He picked up the phone, but there was no signal. "The phone's out," he said grimly. The lights in the house flickered, then went out completely, leaving them in darkness. "Robert," Linda called, but he was nowhere to be seen. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. "Who's there?" Linda asked, but there was no answer. A shadowy figure emerged, moving closer to her. Its eyes glowed a sinister red in the darkness. The Christmas Eve sky over Chicago was pitch black, thick clouds hiding the moon and casting an eerie, cold atmosphere over the city. A chilling wind swept through the empty streets, carrying with it a sinister whisper, like the murmurs of lost souls. Inside the Johnson family home, the fireplace burned brightly, but it couldn't dispel the deep-seated chill that had settled over the household. The family gathered together in the living room, trying to recapture a sense of warmth and cheer. The Christmas tree was beautifully decorated, its lights twinkling and casting shimmering reflections across the walls. "Would you like to open your presents now?" Linda smiled, looking at her children. "Yes, please," Emily cheered, but her voice held a hint of worry. Michael stayed silent, his gaze fixed on the window. He couldn't shake the unease from the strange events that had been unfolding. The snowman was destroyed, but was that truly the end of it? "Michael, what's wrong?" Robert asked, putting a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. "I just feel like something's still not right," Michael whispered. "Don't worry, everything will be fine. Let's enjoy Christmas Eve as a family," Robert reassured him, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. As the family began opening presents, laughter and chatter filled the room, but the underlying tension lingered. Suddenly, there was a soft knock at the door, a steady, cold sound like the beating of a soulless heart. They froze, exchanging nervous glances. "Who could be here at this hour?" Linda asked, confused. "I'll go check," Robert said, standing up, but Michael quickly grabbed his arm. "Don't open the door. Dad," he warned, eyes wide with fear. "Son, we can't just leave someone out in the cold," Robert replied gently, prying Michael's hand away. He approached the door, peeking through the peephole. All he saw was darkness, no sign of anyone outside. Yet the knocking continued, steady and insistent. "There's no one out there," Robert muttered, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Please don't open it," Linda said again, her voice trembling. But before he could decide, the knocking grew louder, more forceful. The door shook with each pounding, as if someone or something was trying to break in. "What on earth is happening?" Robert exclaimed, stepping back. Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered, then went out completely. The room plunged into darkness, leaving only the faint glow from the fireplace. "Emily, come here," Linda called, pulling her daughter close. Michael ran to the window, pulling the curtain back slightly to look outside. In the dim moonlight, he saw a tall figure standing in the snow. "No way! The snowman?" he whispered, his heart racing. But the snowman had been destroyed. How could it still be there? This figure looked larger, distorted, and more terrifying. Its deep, black eyes glowed with an eerie red light, and its mouth stretched into a monstrous grin filled with sharp teeth. What do you see? Michael, Robert asked, moving toward him. The snowman. It's back, Michael replied, his voice shaking. Robert looked outside, and his eyes widened in horror. The figure was moving, taking slow but deliberate steps toward the house. With each step, the ground seemed to tremble, leaving deep footprints in the snow. What are we going to do? Linda's voice quivered with fear. The phone. We need to call the police. Robert ran to the phone, only to find the line was dead, replaced by an unsettling static. The pounding on the door grew louder and more relentless, as if the door would give way at any moment. The family huddled together in the center of the room, their faces filled with dread. We need to find a place to hide, Robert said decisively. Upstairs. Quickly, they hurried up the stairs, but just as they reached the landing, there was a loud crash from below. The front door had been broken open. Heavy footsteps echoed from downstairs, each step slow and deliberate. In here, Robert directed them into the master bedroom. They dashed inside, locking the door behind them. Linda held Emily tightly, who was now sobbing, while Michael tried to steady his own breathing. We can't hide here forever, he whispered. I know, Robert replied, wiping sweat from his brow. We need a plan. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. An ominous silence settled over them, as if time itself had paused. Then, a soft scratching sound began, like claws scraping against wood. Please go away, Linda whispered, tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, a deep voice boomed from the other side of the door, a voice that seemed to come from beyond this world. Johnson family, you cannot escape. Michael felt a surge of fear but knew he had to act. Looking around the room, he noticed a large window leading to the balcony. Dad, we can get outside from here. He pointed toward the window, but it's freezing out there, and we have nowhere to go. Linda protested. We don't have a choice. Robert decided. Let's go. They opened the window, and the freezing wind hit them, but it was nothing compared to the terror they were fleeing. One by one, they climbed onto the balcony. The snow on the railing made every movement slippery and dangerous. Climb down using the drain pipe, Robert instructed. I'll help you all. Michael carefully climbed down first, followed by Emily with her father's guidance. Once they were safely on the ground, Robert turned back to help Linda. Hurry, please, Linda urged, her face full of fear. But before Robert could join them, the bedroom door burst open. The snowman stood in the doorway, towering and more menacing than ever. Its long, clawed hand reached out and grabbed Robert. No, Linda screamed, but it was too late. Robert was pulled back into the room, his scream echoing through the cold night. Dad! Michael and Emily cried out in unison, tears streaming down their faces. We have to go. Linda forced herself to stay strong, pulling her children toward the street. They ran through the empty, snow-covered streets, the snow falling heavier and blurring their vision. The sound of the wind and heavy footsteps followed them, as if the snowman was still giving chase. In here, Michael pointed to an abandoned house with its door slightly ajar. They rushed inside, slamming the door shut behind them. The interior was pitch dark, only faint slivers of light coming through gaps in the walls. We can't keep running forever, Linda panted. I think we have to face it, Michael said, determination in his voice. What do you mean? Linda asked, horrified. That snowman, it's not just any creature. It might be connected to something we did. He explained. What could we have done? Linda was confused and desperate. I'm not sure, but maybe we woke it up somehow when we built the snowman. Maybe we need to destroy it again, but in a different way. The sounds outside grew closer. The door shook as if something was about to break it down. We need fire, Michael suddenly remembered. Fire could melt the snow, but we don't have anything to burn, Linda said, desperate. Emily pulled a small lighter from her pocket. I took this from the kitchen earlier, she said quietly. Good thinking. Emily, Michael praised her. Mom, we need something to use as a torch. They searched around and found a wooden stick and a torn piece of fabric. Michael quickly wrapped the fabric around the stick and lit it with the lighter. The door burst open, and the snowman entered with a terrifying roar. Michael stepped forward bravely, holding the torch high. "Go back to where you came from," he shouted, thrusting the flame toward the snowman. A shriek filled the air as the fire touched its icy form. The snowman recoiled but didn't melt as they'd hoped. "It's not working," Linda cried. "We need more fire," Michael yelled. But before they could act, the snowman lashed out, knocking the torch from Michael's hand. It advanced, its glowing red eyes fixed on them. "Is this the end?" Linda thought, clutching her children tightly. Suddenly, the sound of a police siren pierced the night, blue and red lights flashing in the distance. The snowman turned to look, letting out a roar of anger, stepped back, fading into the darkness and leaving behind a lingering, icy fog. The police arrived, their headlights illuminating the area. "Are you all right?" one officer asked, his face full of concern. "My husband, he's still in the house," Linda sobbed. "We'll find him. Let us help you," the officer assured her. Dawn broke over the city of Chicago, but the faint sunlight couldn't dispel the cold, eerie fog that blanketed everything. Snow continued to fall, gently yet persistently, covering the landscape in a pristine white sheet. For the Johnson family, however, that purity only heightened the unease and dread gnawing at their souls. Linda awoke with swollen eyes after a sleepless night. She looked around the room and saw Michael and Emily asleep on the couch, traces of the previous night's terror still evident on their faces. Robert hadn't returned, and no one knew where he was. Maybe the police have found him, Linda told herself, clinging to a fragile sense of hope. She decided to go out and check, though a deep worry filled her heart. Stepping out from the abandoned house where they'd taken refuge, Linda felt the bitter cold seep into her bones. She scanned the surroundings, but there was no sign of the police or Robert. However, something strange caught her attention. In the spot where the terrifying snowman had stood the night before, there was now just a puddle of melted snow on the frozen ground. How can that be? It's still below freezing. How did the snow melt? Linda muttered in disbelief. She approached the puddle, feeling an uncanny chill. At its center, she noticed something glinting. Kneeling down, she found a soggy piece of paper. As she picked it up, she realized it was part of a family photo. Her heart pounded. This photo, how did it get here? She remembered the picture hanging in their living room, capturing their family in a happy, carefree moment. Now, it was torn, with only a part remaining, and Michael's face had been clawed and scratched. Overcome with fear, Linda hurried back to the house. "Michael, Emily, wake up," she called, her voice trembling. The two children jolted awake. "Mom, what's wrong?" Michael asked, eyes wide. "Look at this," Linda said, holding out the torn photo. "I found it out there, where the snowman melted." Michael took the photo, his face turning pale. "This was in our living room, but how did it end up here? And look," Michael's face is scratched out. Emily whispered, her voice as faint as a winter breeze. They looked at each other, dread filling the air. "What do we do now, Mom?" Michael asked, trying to stay calm. "We need to call the police," Linda decided. "Maybe they've found your father and can help us." They went to the nearest police station and recounted the whole story to the officer on duty. But as he listened, his expression grew more skeptical. "Mrs. Johnson, I understand you and your children are going through a tough time, but a story about a snowman coming to life and attacking your family, it's hard to believe," the officer said, his voice sympathetic but tinged with doubt. "But my husband is missing, and we have proof," Linda insisted, holding out the torn photo. The officer examined the picture but shook his head. "This is just a damaged photo. There's no evidence that anyone is threatening your family." Michael's frustration boiled over. "Don't you believe us?" We were attacked. Calm down, son, Linda said, trying to keep him composed. Sir, please help us find my husband. At least file a missing person report. The officer sighed. All right, I'll take down your information. But in the meantime, I suggest you go back home and try to rest. Returning to their house, the Johnsons felt a sense of despair and helplessness. No one believed them, and Robert was still missing. The home felt colder and emptier than ever. We can't just sit here waiting, Michael said, his gaze resolute. We have to find out what's happening ourselves. But what can we do? Linda asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion and hopelessness. I remember that when we made the snowman, a strange man walked by, Emily recalled. He stared at us, and I felt really scared. That's right. He was wearing a long black coat and looked gaunt. Michael added, maybe he has something to do with all of this. We need to find him. Linda agreed. Maybe he knows something. They decided to walk around the neighborhood, asking if anyone had seen the mysterious man. However, no one knew or remembered seeing him. People looked at them oddly, as if they were the strange ones. We're wasting time, Michael said in frustration. Maybe we should just go back home. On their way back, they passed an old, dilapidated house with thick curtains covering the windows. A cold sensation crept over them, causing them to stop. This house, I've never seen anyone live here, Emily whispered. But look, Michael pointed at the front door. There are footprints leading inside, and they look like the ones we saw around the snowman. Linda hesitated. Should we? We have to try, Michael decided, stepping forward to knock on the door. There was no response. The door slowly creaked open on its own, emitting an unsettling groan. Inside, it was dark, and a damp, icy smell hung in the air. Hello? Is anyone here? Linda called out, but only echoes replied. They entered, the dim light from the windows casting shadows over the room. Old photographs lined the walls, and, disturbingly, each one was of their family, capturing moments of joy and ordinary life. How is this possible? Linda gasped. Look, Emily pointed to a small altar in the corner. On it sat a wax figure of a snowman, surrounded by extinguished candles. Michael moved closer, realizing the figure looked exactly like the snowman they had built. Maybe this is the source of everything. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. Laughter echoed throughout the house, as if the walls themselves were mocking them. You shouldn't have come here, a deep voice growled. Emerging from the shadows was the mysterious man, his cold eyes fixated on them. Who are you? What have you done with my husband? Linda cried. I just wanted you to feel the pain I've endured, he replied, his voice laced with bitterness. My family was forgotten, and now I will take away your happiness. What are you talking about? Michael shouted. We haven't done anything to you. Nothing, you say, while you bask in happiness. I've lost everything. That snowman is a symbol of my suffering, and now it will destroy you. Linda backed away, overwhelmed by fear. Please, give me back my husband. It's too late, he sneered. Michael glanced around, searching for anything to defend his family. He grabbed a wooden stick and positioned himself in front of his mother and sister. You won't hurt us. We'll see about that. The man advanced toward them, but suddenly, a loud noise came from outside. Police, open up immediately. A strong voice shattered the tense silence. The man recoiled, startled. You called them here? Impossible. The door burst open, and flashlight beams flooded the room. Freeze! Hands up! Ordered the officer. The man let out a furious roar before disappearing into the shadows. The police pursued him, but found no trace. Linda hugged her children tightly, tears streaming down her face. We need help. Afterward, the police found Robert trapped in a basement room, exhausted but safe. The Johnson family was finally reunited, feeling a mixture of relief and gratitude. However, the mysterious man remained at large. The police explained he was a disturbed individual, someone who had lost his family in an accident and had since lived in isolation, harboring resentment toward happy families. We'll continue searching for him, but for now, it would be safest for your family to leave town. The officer advised. The Johnsons agreed and decided to move away to start a new life. Yet the haunting memory of the deadly snowman lingered, etched into their minds. The story of the Johnson family quickly spread through the neighborhood, filling people with unease and fear. Some began to believe that a dark force was haunting the area. No one dared to build a snowman, and the cheerful winter tradition gradually faded away. The following winter, a new family moved into the neighborhood. Their young child was eager to play in the snow and build a big snowman in the yard. "No, dear, we don't build snowmen here," the mother said, her eyes reflecting an old fear. "But why not, Mom?" the child asked, confused. "It's a long story, but trust me, it's better not to." Winter in Chicago continued to cover the city with a thick layer of snow. Yet it no longer brought the joyous feeling of the holiday season. After the horrifying events surrounding the Johnson family, rumors of a deadly snowman quickly spread across the neighborhood. The warm lights from homes couldn't dispel the darkness and fear that seemed to blanket the area. In the days following the Johnsons' departure, neighbors began to share their own strange encounters. Mrs. Smith, who lived 2 houses away, recounted how the snowman her grandson had built transformed in unsettling ways each night. The small stone eyes shifted positions, as if it were watching their every move. Mr. Brown at the end of the street swore he had seen his family's snowman move from the front yard to the gate on a snowy night. "We can't keep living like this," Mrs. Smith said at a neighborhood meeting. "Something is seriously wrong." Everyone nodded in agreement, exchanging worried glances. "Maybe we should stop building snowmen," someone suggested. "That could be the root of all this." The decision was made. From then on, no family in the neighborhood dared to build a snowman. Lawns lay empty, missing the cheerful winter scenes, replaced by a heavy silence interrupted only by the cold wind whistling through. As for the Johnson family, they had moved to a small town down south, far from the terrifying memories. Their new home was cozy and peaceful, surrounded by green fields. Yet, despite the distance, the haunting memory of the deadly snowman lingered. "I still dream about it, Mom," Michael admitted one evening as the family gathered for dinner. The snowman with deep, black eyes and a terrifying grin. Linda placed a comforting hand on her son's shoulder, her gaze full of love. "I know, sweetheart, but we're safe now. There's no snow here, no snowman to harm us." Robert nodded in agreement. "We'll start a new life. Let's try to put the past behind us." Emily sat quietly, gazing out the window at the sunset casting a warm glow across the sky. "But what if it finds us?" she whispered. "It won't, Emily," Robert reassured her with a smile. "We've left it far behind." Meanwhile, winter returned to the old neighborhood. Snow began to fall gently, creating a peaceful scene. A new family had moved into the Johnsons' former home. The DeVises, a young couple with a 7-year-old son named Tommy, who was full of energy and curiosity. "I want to play in the snow," Tommy exclaimed excitedly, gazing out at the snow-covered yard. "All right, sweetheart," Mrs. Davis smiled, "but make sure to bundle up." "Can we build a snowman?" Tommy asked eagerly, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Mr. Davis exchanged a hesitant glance with his wife. "I heard there's a tradition of not building snowmen in winter here." "Oh, that's just a silly rumor," Mrs. Davis waved it off. "We don't need to believe in superstitions. Yeah, let's make the biggest snowman ever." Tommy cheered, running outside with a shovel and bucket. The family set to work, their laughter filling the quiet air. Together, they built a tall snowman, dressed it with a wool hat, a red scarf, and a friendly smile on its face. "It's perfect," Mrs. Davis said proudly, admiring their work. We should take a picture to remember it. After snapping a photo, they returned inside, leaving the snowman standing silently in the yard. However, across the street, Mrs. Smith watched the scene unfold, her face lined with worry. "Why did they build a snowman?" she murmured. "Don't they know what happened here?" That night, after the Davis family had fallen asleep, a chilling wind swept through the neighborhood. The snowman in the yard seemed to shiver slightly. Its small stone eyes reflected the pale moonlight, casting an eerie glow. In his dreams, Tommy found himself standing in a vast, snowy field. His snowman loomed in front of him, its face transformed from friendly to a twisted, sinister grin. "Come play with me, Tommy." A deep, distant voice echoed. Tommy jolted awake, beads of cold sweat on his forehead. "It was just a dream," he whispered to himself, trying to shake the unsettling feeling. The next morning, Mrs. Smith decided to visit the Davis family to warn them. "Hello, I'm your neighbor from across the street," she said as Mrs. Davis opened the door. "I wanted to talk to you about the snowman in your yard." "Oh, is there something wrong?" Mrs. Davis asked, surprised. "In this neighborhood, we have a tradition of not building snowmen," Mrs. Smith explained, carefully choosing her words. "Strange things have happened in the past." Mrs. Davis smiled gently. "Thank you for your concern, but we don't believe in such rumors. Everything's fine." Mrs. Smith sighed. "I understand, but please, be cautious if anything unusual happens." Day by day, strange occurrences began to affect the Davis family. The snowman outside seemed to shift position slightly each morning. Its eyes appeared to follow them, and its smile grew more twisted and grotesque. "Do you think there's something off about that snowman?" Mr. Davis asked his wife one evening. "I've noticed it too," Mrs. Davis admitted. "Maybe we should take it down." But before they could, one night, there was a soft knock at the door around midnight. Mr. Davis opened it, but no one was there, only darkness and biting cold. However, the snowman had moved closer, now just a few steps from the door. "This can't be," he murmured, a wave of fear washing over him. And so, the story repeated, and the haunting of the deadly snowman continued to engulf the neighborhood. More people believed that a dark presence haunted the area, and no one seemed able to escape its reach. For the Johnson family, even in their new home, they couldn't forget what they had endured. One evening, as Michael sat in his room, he heard a tapping at the window. Looking out, he saw a large snowflake land on the glass, melting into a face resembling the snowman's menacing grin. "No, this can't be happening," Michael whispered, feeling the terror clawing its way back. He decided not to tell his parents, not wanting to worry them, but from that moment on, Michael always felt as though something was watching him, a shadow from a past that couldn't be erased. The story of the deadly snowman in Chicago became an urban legend, passed from person to person. Every winter, as snow began to fall, fear stirred in the hearts of those who had heard the tale. No one knew the true origin of the mysterious snowman or whether it was merely a product of imagination or something supernatural. But one thing was certain: the darkness remained, hidden beneath the pristine snow. And as children innocently began rolling snowballs to create new snowmen, the terrifying story threatened to start all over again. Thank you for joining us as we unraveled these haunting tales of the sinister snowman. Sometimes, even the most innocent figures of winter hide chilling secrets. If these stories sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Here at Enigma of the Unknown, we explore mysteries that lurk in unexpected places. Until next time, remember, not all snowmen are made to spread joy. Sweet dreams, and beware of what watches you from the snow. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments to the tone or style for a more haunting effect.